Hello, everybody. Jonathan Rayo here with SimplifiedGuitar.com, and welcome to episode 12 of the How to Play Q&A, where I answer your questions and song suggestions. Today, we have a question from Antony Saji, who wants to know how to switch from one chord to the next successfully, I'm assuming. I know that is definitely a challenge that a lot of people face, getting those transitions working, especially in the middle of a song while you're trying to play a song. When should you start switching? How do you get better at switching? So that's what I'm going to cover today. So when it comes to switching chords, I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of chords from the G chord family just for practice, just to make my point. So let's say we're using the G chord and the C add 9 chord, and we're just going to look at how we're going to go back and forth from one to the other. And these two chords are a great start to practice with, because the transition is so easy. You're just going from here, and these two fingers are just moving down each a string and then back up for the G, right? Your third and fourth finger are not moving the whole time. So the G chord family is what I teach first. That's the first chord family I recommend you learn. It's the easiest to learn, and they're the easiest chords to switch between from one to the next. So start there and build your confidence before you move on to other chords. So let's look at the G and the switch from G to C add 9, okay, and then back to G. So in the three strum patterns that I teach, the driving pattern, the folk pattern, and the swing pattern, all three of those, there's going to be an up strum at the end of the measure, okay? Now, the driving pattern and the folk pattern are both 4-beat strum patterns, and then the swing pattern is a 3-beat strum pattern, but either way, whether it's a 4-beat or a 3-beat, at the end of the measure, there's going to be an up strum, okay? So for the driving pattern, for instance, after beat 4, there's going to be an up strum after beat 4 on the and, okay? So when you think about the beats of a song, right, if you're tapping your foot to the beat of a song, if it's a 4-beat strum pattern, which is usually the case, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on like that, okay? But then you can also add counts on the in-betweens. So if you're tapping your foot again, if this is my foot, when my foot comes up, that can also be a count. Let's go ahead and count that, and we'll say and for the ups, okay? So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, like that, okay? So at the end of the measure, after 4, on the and, okay, on the and after 4 is when you want to make that switch, okay? So going back to that chord, again, let's say we're doing a 4-beat strum pattern. We've got after 4, when I say and, my hand is up, okay? So even though I'm strumming that particular beat on and, I'm coming up and strumming up. That's another thing to keep in mind. When you're doing an up strum, you don't have to strum all 6 strings. In fact, you don't really want to strum all 6 strings. You just want to strum the bottom 3 or 4, okay? And so when I'm doing that up strum, my 2 fingers here, the only ones that are moving, you don't have to pick up your whole hand. You just pick up the fingers that are moving, right? And you don't have to throw them up in the air and then bring them back down. You just pick them up very lightly off the strings, just enough to move them to the next string, right? So the path of least resistance, right? That's what you got to keep in mind. So we're going to pick up our fingers as little as we need to move them, and then we're going to put them in the new spot. So on and, our fingers are up, and they need to be back down on the new chord as we begin the first beat of the new measure, okay? So you have that time between the and on 4 and the 1 of the new measure to make your switch, okay? Now, when you're practicing your transitions, and I would recommend if you're having trouble with transitions, stop playing songs and just practice the transitions. And probably you should use the chords for the song that you want to play. So let's say you're trying to play a song that's in the key of G, then use those chords and the particular progression that you need for the song, but just take those chords and practice the transitions, right, by themselves, and just break it down to just, let's say, 2 chords, right? So for this example, I'm using G and C. And you're just going to practice that transition by itself, and you're going to go very slow, right? So I'm just strumming very slowly, and I'm going to focus on making that switch at the right time on the up strum, right? Picking my fingers up and then putting them back down on 1 on the new measure, okay? So here's an example. I'm going to just use the 4-beat strum pattern, the driving pattern, and I'll make that switch at the right time, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 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 1, right? Like that. So that's how you're going to make those transitions. And if you are having trouble landing it in time, then that means you just need to practice those chords some more, right? You need to practice getting your fingers to memorize those positions, not only the positions, but also the switching from one to the next, right? Because you may have your fingers memorizing this particular chord, but going from, let's say, the E minor to the C, that is a whole another ball game than going from the G to the C, right? You also have to memorize or learn, your fingers have to learn the transition and not just the position, right? So it's important to practice those transitions, okay? And you can even practice those transitions without strumming, right? So just practice holding your fingers in the E minor. This is the E minor 7, and then making that switch to the C, and then making the switch to the G, and then going back to the C, and making those transitions. And maybe you could just count out loud how long it takes you. So you know, using Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2, try to get to that new chord within 2 seconds, right? Make goals for yourself, and then alter those goals as you reach those goals. You make new ones, right? And try to get faster and faster and faster with your transitions, right? Until you can go from one chord to every other chord within a chord family, okay? And that's a great practice you can do to try and get quicker at your transitions, right? And also how to practice switching, making those transitions at the right time within a strum pattern, okay? All right, Antony, I hope that was helpful for you. And if anybody else has any questions or song suggestions, you can submit that down below in the comment section, or you can head over to simplifiedguitar.com/ask, and you can submit your questions or song suggestions there. All right, I hope to see you guys in another lesson. Take care.